Thank you, Commander Schmidt, for that wonderful introduction and for your steadfast devotion to our country. I want to thank all of our distinguished guests with us today, including HUD Secretary Ben Carson, VA Secretary David Shulkin, and former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates. Where is Bob Gates? Bob Gates has been so great. Tell you, he started off saying bad things about me, and then he said great things, and now I like him. Thank you, Bob. It's a great honor to be back here with all of my friends at the American Legion and your national convention. I want to thank Governor Sandoval for being here. Dean Heller is here someplace or will shortly be here. He's caught the first flight out. So I want to thank Dean Heller, Senator, for being here. The American Legion embodies the spirit of patriotism that is the true source of our strength and the best hope for our future. You love our country, you cherish our values, and you definitely defend our great American flag. No doubt about that. Above all else, you believe in America, just like America believes in you. Today, we are here to honor you for the sacrifices you have made to defend our nation and preserve our way of life. But we're also here for another reason. We are here to hold you up as an example of strength, courage, and resolve that our country will need to overcome the many challenges that we face. We are here to draw inspiration from you as we seek to renew the bonds of loyalty that bind us together as one people and one nation. Those who wear the nation's uniform come from all different backgrounds and from every single walk of life. But they are all united by shared values and a shared sense of duty. They are all part of one team with only one mission in mind. Most importantly, they're all Americans, and they work together, they fight together, and they sacrifice together to defend our magnificent home. Thank you. Now our nation must follow that same work ethic, that same devotion to a greater cause, to achieve our country's full potential. Here with us today are veterans who have fought in every major military engagement dating all the way back to World War II. You've endured bitter winters, treacherous jungles, barren deserts, and stormy waters. You've left your families, charged into danger, faced down your enemies, and bore the scars and wounds of war. Each of you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. With that oath, you pledged your honor and your very lives for our great nation. Every veteran here today is part of a long, unbroken chain of American heroes. We salute your service. The American Legion not only remembers history, you help keep history alive. You teach young Americans to have pride in our history so that they will have confidence in our future. History and culture, so important. For generations now, the American Legion has taught our young people the principles of Americanism. You emphasize the need to preserve the nation's cultural, moral, and patriotic values. You encourage the observation of patriotic holidays. you stressed the need to enforce our laws, including our immigration laws. You teach the responsibilities of citizenship and the importance of the Pledge of Allegiance. True. So important. And you do it all, as your motto says, for God and country. That's why we're here today, for America and for God. But to fulfill our patriotic duties, we must take care of our great veterans. One year ago at this gathering, and I remember so many of you so well, I promised you that I would make it my priority to fix the broken VA and deliver our veterans the care they so richly deserve. And you see what's been happening. Now you have a true reformer in Secretary David Shulkin. He has done an incredible job. He's working night and day to implement the 10-point reform plan that I discussed with you last year. Already we have made incredible progress. We are publishing wait times online for every VA facility, so you know what the wait is. We've delivered same-day emergency mental health services at every VA medical center. We've opened the promised White House VA hotline. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. We've dramatically increased the number of veterans approved to see the doctor of their choice and signal legislation to continue that very important choice program that I spoke to you about last year. And I want to thank the American Legion for your help in getting this done. You have been so helpful. Thank you very much. Something that they've been trying to pass for 40 years, and we've passed VA accountability legislation. So if somebody that works at the VA is bad to the people of the VA, disrespectful, not treating our fellow patriots well, we look at them and we say, "You're fired." That's it. That's it. They don't do a good job, they're out. Because we want people, we have great people at the VA, but we want people that do a great job. We weren't able to do that before. That was a hard piece of legislation to get passed. It's been worked on for so long, we got it done. So we're very proud of that. Last week, I also signed the Harry W. Comrie Veterans Educational Assistant Act. That's a big thing. This legislation bears the name of one of the first members of the Legion, your past commander, a man who wrote the original draft of the first landmark GI Bill in 1944. And now, under this legislation, veterans can use their GI benefits at any point in their lifetime. Some difference. And in just a few moments, right here on this stage, I will sign another historic bill that the American Legion helped us deliver, the Veterans Appeals Improvement and Modernization Act. And you all know what that means. Right? No longer will veterans be kept waiting for years to get an answer to their appeals. They will receive timely updates, and they will get decisions much more quickly in a fraction of the time. And the Legion, I have to say, pressed so hard for that legislation. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much. You really helped. They have a lot of power, and they use it well. When I spoke to you last year, I also promised that we would build up our military, and that's exactly what we have done. I am proud to report that we have worked with Congress to achieve a dramatic increase in defense spending this year. We are committed to expanding and improving a state-of-the-art missile defense system to shoot down missiles in flight. And we're getting better and better and better at it. It's actually incredible what's taking place. And we will develop new surveillance and long-range strike capabilities to prevent our enemies from launching them in the first place. In every foreign policy decision, thank you. In every foreign policy decision, we are making clear that we will always put the safety and security of our citizens first. That is why early this week I announced a new strategy in Afghanistan and South Asia. We will pursue an honorable and enduring outcome in Afghanistan, worthy of the tremendous sacrifice our troops have already made. We will give our men and women in uniform the tools they need and the trust they have earned to fight and to win. And we have made, as you have been reading and seeing, tremendous progress in the fight against terrorism. Just over a month ago in Iraq, Mosul was liberated from the barbaric rule of ISIS. We are stripping terrorists of their territory at a record clip. Their funding, their networks, and the false allure of their ideology. And I will tell you, we're going to start working very hard on the Internet because they're using the Internet at a level that they should not be allowed to use the Internet. They're recruiting from the Internet. And we are going to work under my administration very hard so that doesn't happen. No longer are we using our military to build democracies. Instead, we're forming a coalition of nations that share the aim of stamping out extremism, defeating terrorism, and pursuing stability, prosperity, and peace. Through the generations, America has always prevailed, not by military might alone, but also by the strength of our spirit. And we have in this country today such spirit. I see it when I meet the people backstage. They're so proud once again. I must say, much more proud than they were last year at this time. They are feeling very good about our country. Very, very good about our country. Because our people have always had that will to endure and to overcome. This is now the challenge of our times. We must ask ourselves who we are, what we stand for, and what together we can achieve. If American patriots could secure our independence, carve out a home in the wilderness, and free millions from tyranny and oppression around the world, then that same spirit of strength, courage, and resolve can help us create a better future for our people today, a future like even our people have never had before in this great country. That's what we're aiming for. We don't have to be content with a dilapidated road system, with crumbling buildings, or rusted out factories. We can build gleaming new highways, state-of-the-art manufacturing, and modern works of wonder. And we can do it all with American workers and American iron, aluminum, and steel. We can do it ourselves. We do not have to accept the economic decay of once thriving hubs of industry, where they leave and they let all those jobs go, and those companies move to other countries. We've stopped that flow, and companies are now coming back into the United States, and I am so proud of that. We can bring new jobs to Pittsburgh and Detroit and Baltimore and help struggling communities thrive and dream and prosper. We do not need to limit the potential of our children by trapping them in failing government schools. Every child should have the chance to explore their talents, pursue their passions, and know the joy of achieving their ambitions. And we will never tolerate crime in our cities, bloodshed in our communities, or acts of hatred or terrorism against our citizens. We will not stand for it. We will always support our great law enforcement personnel. These are great people. Build bridges of trust and cooperation and keep our families safe. It is time to heal the wounds that divide us and to seek a new unity based on the common values that unite us. We are one people with one home and one great flag. We are not defined by the color of our skin, the figure on our paycheck, or the party of our politics. We are defined by our shared humanity, by our citizenship in this magnificent nation, and by the love that fills our hearts. And I know, I speak for all of you when I say our hearts beat for America. Our souls fill with pride every time we hear the national anthem. This is the spirit we need to overcome our challenges, to pursue our common destiny, and to achieve a brighter future for our people. We will win. Watch. We will win. This is the future we can build together if we have the courage to act, the strength to endure, and the patriotism to join together with true affection for our fellow citizen. I want to close with the story of a hero who defines the spirit of service and sacrifice, a man whose strength, patriotism, and courage knows no bounds. A Vietnam veteran who threw himself on top of a grenade to protect his fellow comrades. This true American hero went on to serve in the National Guard for over 27 years. He is now a retired captain at his local fire department and owns a funeral home that memorializes our heroes. And he has worked tirelessly to bring another veterans post to Kansas City so that those who return from combat have a place to go that honors and supports them. Some of you know this incredible patriot. He's a friend to many in this room. He is with us here today, and he's on stage with us right now. Medal of Honor recipient, Donald E. Ballard. He's got to say a word, right? This wasn't in the planning. Do I have your approval?
Yes, sir.
Come on, Don, get up there.
There is no greater love than someone that loves this country, and I believe we've elected the right leader to lead us out to drain the swamp. Thank you. I'm with you.
Thank you,
I traveled with you before you were elected.
Thank you so much.
22 to support.
See, that's very risky of me. That could ruin the whole day for me. If he got up and said the opposite, I would be in trouble. So thank you, Don. That was very risky. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had a pretty good idea. But Don, on behalf of the people of the United States, I want to thank you for your courageous service. You inspire us all. Today we are reminded that the greatness of our nation is found in our people like Don. As long as we have faith in each other and confidence in our values, then there is no challenge too great for us to conquer. We are people. We are people who love. We are people with heart. We are people who adore. We are people that are great. There is no country like the United States of America. We have no division too deep for us to heal. And there is no enemy too strong for us to overcome. Because in America, we never lose faith. We never forget who we are, and we never stop striving for a better future. Together, we cannot fail. We will not fail. We will make America great again, greater than ever before, I promise. So I want to thank you to the American Legion. You talk of greatness. You talk of greatness. The American Legion is greatness. Thank you very much to our service members and to Don and to everybody in the room. Thank you to our great, great veterans. May God bless you. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. It's my honor. Thank you. Thank you.
I love you, Trump!
Thank you. We love you too. Thank you. This is a big one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
And there you have President Donald Trump wrapping up his remarks at the American Legion National Convention, signing an order that he hopes will improve the appeals process for so many of our nation's veterans as well. A rousing speech, mostly off of prompter, but calling for unity, calling for the nation to come together and heal our divisions. The president, of course, coming off a fiery event last night in Phoenix. Hi, guys. I'm Amna Nawaz in New York, and we're going to break it all down. What happened in the event, in case you missed it, the headlines from the last 24 hours, and some other big headlines we are following right here at ABC News. Let's bring in my colleagues down in Washington, D.C. Got the dream team together. ABC's political director, Rick Klein, Mary Bruce, and Arlette Saenz right there in our bureau. How you doing, guys?
All right, pretty good, Amna.
Hey, we have one more friend over at the Department of Defense, Louis Martinez, who covers the Defense Department for ABC. Hi, Louis, how you doing?
Doing well, Amna.
All right, guys, let's jump in. Hey, Rick, Mary, and Arlette, feel free to jump in on this here. This, to some degree, was sort of President Trump in it with a different tone, a different set of remarks than we've seen him make, certainly over the last 24 hours, really over the last week. Why don't you guys take it away? What did you make of his speech and how he chose to deliver that today?
Monday Trump should meet Tuesday Trump. Look, we've seen every side of him, and the only connective tissue is that this is Trump being Trump. And I feel like this is a return to the unifying message that he had on Monday, which he blew to smithereens last night with a fiery, meandering 80-plus minute speech that seemed to attack everyone, including us in the news media. So I feel like he's freelancing on this and kind of deciding on the tone. This isn't that someone's giving him advice or saying this. It's a different tone for a different day of the week, literally, and often just for a different event.
Yeah, and if you compared last night's remarks to the remarks we just heard, it seems a bit like whiplash. I mean, last night was all about personal grievances, the president defending a lot of his recent positions, especially the response to Charlottesville, and today was much more about legislation and policy. And a lot of that, I think, in part this is just the way Donald Trump operates, but also the logistics of this event are very different. Last night was a huge campaign rally, thousands of people. We know that the president feeds off of those crowds. This is a smaller event, much more sort of somber in tone, and also there's only one camera there. This is just a pool camera. There isn't a big, huge gaggle of press like there are at these campaign rallies. So it's part the president, but I think also part simply the event.
And also the audience that was there. Yeah. This is the American Legion, veterans. He's able to talk about that type of policy and government reform in that spectrum, whereas at his rally, it's his fervent supporters who are feeding off. And it kind of seems like the energy maybe here wasn't as high as the energy at the rally yesterday.
But remember, he didn't have to have the rally last night.
No,
he decided to do it. This wasn't like a pre-planned event. This was a campaign event 3 years before he runs for re-election, and a day after.
Never too soon to start.
A day, I suppose. No, there is too soon. A day after the Afghanistan strategy, he decided to do this and go out there and deliver that message. He controlled all of that, and he knew what he was doing.
And what's so interesting too is, the rally last night, which came after that, somber, really presidential remarks about his Afghanistan strategy. We've now gone, somber presidential, sort of off the rails, and back to somber and presidential today. But yet last night he didn't really mention that strategy. Usually if the president goes out on the road after outlining, a new strategy, a new bit of policy, that you would be mentioning that. Last night he spent much more time talking about his war with the media than the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, guys, and to that point, he actually sort of rehashed some of the reporting that's been going on since the events in Charlottesville, the event that still looms so large over a lot of the conversations Mr. Trump is forced to have and that we are having in the national media as well. But just to take a look at this for anyone who missed it last night, this is the moment from that Phoenix rally last night in which President Trump remarked on his Charlottesville comments. Take a look.
I don't want to bore you with this, but it shows you how dishonest they are. And most of you know this anyway. So here's what I said, really fast. Here's what I said on Saturday. We're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia. This is me speaking. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. That's me speaking on Saturday, right after the event.
Guys, what he left out there, of course, was the following line, which was "on many sides," which is the first sort of phrase that created so many headlines and controversy afterwards. So why is he still talking about this? What does the president have to prove at this point by going back and sharing just a portion of what he said earlier?
That's right. Well, he misquoted himself, I suppose, or at least selectively quoted himself. I think he sees value in going back to the basics of what he said, the original message, because he feels like his base responds to that. We saw it in our poll. It was, I think, 28% support for what he said last week. That's his base, essentially, a quarter to a third of the country. And for them, they liked what they heard from him. He can almost do no wrong. And it makes a point that I think is a powerful one for people in that room and to a lot of his supporters, which is this is the media misconstruing it. And it allows him to find an enemy, to pick someone's and us in the media and find a way to joust against us. And I think that that is where he personally finds the most fuel for the fire that he brings out there on the trail.
Yeah, the president is again trying to frame the debate in his own terms, right? And he's doing that in front of his supporters. We know that, with these speeches, oftentimes what we hear, what the Republican establishment hears, and what Trump's supporters in the room hear are very different speeches. And while for those of us who are, paying really close attention to all of the president's responses, this is a lot of revisionist history here. But to those in the room, this is a chance for the president to look like he is sort of grabbing this debate, framing it the way he wants to, and, as you mentioned, giving them a common enemy, pointing the finger at us.
And I don't think that this is going to stop anytime soon, especially now that today that we're pointing out that he didn't say that he had initially said many sides or both sides. This is something that clearly has irked him, that it's not his message that's getting across right now. So I think it's going to keep going on.
So here's another thing that struck me, guys, and a stark difference. Today, we heard him naming some people, right, to thank them there in the room. He thanked former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates, who once actually said that Mr. Trump was unfit to be commander-in-chief, but was in the room, and he likes him now because he said nice things about him. He also thanked Dean Heller, with whom we know he's shared some choice words in the past. Last night, and I think we have a little bit of sound to play from this too, he didn't name names, but he definitely took a few swipes at some of his congressional members of Congress. Actually, let's see if we have that sound and take a listen to that now.
But they all said, Mr. President, your speech was so good last night. Please, Mr. President, don't mention any names. So I won't. No, I won't vote. One vote away. I will not mention any names. Very presidential, isn't it? Very presidential. And nobody wants me to talk about your other senator, who's weak on borders, weak on crime. So I won't talk about him. Nobody wants me to talk about him. Nobody knows who the hell he is.
Guys, it's like a trivia game. I think it sounds like, I'm not sure who you could be talking about here. What is going on here? Doesn't the president have to go back to Washington and try to work with some of these guys down the road?
It's a really easy trivia game. There's only two senators.
I think it's obvious.
They're both Republicans. So so to decode for the viewers, I mean, the mystery man that he talked about at first was John McCain. The second, Jeff Flake. And Jeff Flake's got a tough re-election. John McCain, of course, we know is fighting for his life, diagnosed with brain cancer. He cast that deciding vote on health care. I think it's dumb strategically if you're trying to actually get things done in Washington to do this. This is a political maneuver. But even on that, I feel like there's a human level to not mentioning John McCain and talking about John McCain that surprises me. Keep in mind, John McCain is very ill. He is a beloved statesman, not just in the Republican Party, in Arizona and beyond. And the namesake of his father and grandfather, the John S. McCain, was just involved in an awful, tragic incident that involved the death of several service members. He didn't mention that either. The words John McCain did not escape his lips, and the only way that he brought him up was on the side to make fun of him.
And this is an incredibly perilous political game the president is playing here. Look, he needs their votes. I mean, if you just look at face value here, Republicans don't have that big a margin in the Senate. The president needs every vote he can get to get anything done. And here he is, name calling without name calling, two very important senators whose vote he needs. Also, it does not sit well with a lot of Republicans up on Capitol Hill. It's just not something that you do. When you take a big picture look at this, you have a Republican president calling out an incumbent, vulnerable Republican senator. Usually presidents are trying to keep seats in the Senate in their own party, not risk losing them.
And I mean, ultimately, it could, if Flake ends up losing his primary his race against Democrat, that could also complicate and jeopardize the majority, which Donald Trump wants to keep as many Republicans as possible. And then today you saw him on Twitter, and he went ahead and attacked Jeff Flake
by name.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he
so
wouldn't say it on
the
stage last night.
But look, he's not a Republican. Never was a Republican. I think he's declaring his own independence as they kind of draw away from him, and he is striking out on his own with this. And if he's successful in defeating Jeff Flake in a primary, if he's successful in turning people against John McCain, he shows a different kind of personal power. It seems like it's much more about that personal power than any party power or about control of Congress.
And just one other thing about that clip that is interesting is how the president notes that his aides don't want him to do this. This was one of several things in this speech that the president, his aides advised him against it. And yet he goes out there, He does it anyways,
Yeah.
flying in the face of all of their recommendations. I mean, this is Donald Trump.
But you guys raised an interesting point. I think a lot of people might have expected him to mention the USS McCain. It's something he hasn't talked about there yet. And I want to bring in our colleague Louis Martinez now, because, Louis, there's some updates to that crash. Obviously, that was a guided missile destroyer that collided with a commercial vessel on Monday, and there are still sailors missing. What is the latest with that investigation?
Well, Amna, the latest is that the search continues inside the debris fields, inside the sealed compartments of the destroyer. There were 4 shipping berths. Those are where sleeping quarters where sailors are sleeping when the time of the impact on Monday when this occurred. And the divers have been searching all morning, and we expect some kind of an update maybe over the next 24 hours or so about the progress that they're making. The search continues at sea. There was the initial collision site that was just east of Singapore. There was an expansion of the search area that occurred earlier today as well. That's the search area there being searched by helicopters from the United States, an amphibious ship there, the USS America, that's also in Singapore, as well as aircraft and ships from the Singapore and Malaysian Navy. So a big effort underway to try to find those missing sailors. 10 missing sailors, some of whose remains were found yesterday inside the compartments in which they were sleeping. And it's a very tragic situation. And the big development overnight, of course, was the firing of the 3-star admiral in charge of the Pacific Fleet. That's Vice Admiral Joseph Aucoin. He is the admiral who supervises the entire Pacific, the 7th Fleet area, a large area of operations, particularly around Japan, around South Korea, down in the South China Sea, a lot of ship activity there. And so he was fired by the head of the Pacific Fleet, and because of a loss of confidence, because the Fitzgerald and the McCain incidents are the ones that have garnered the most attention. But earlier this year, there were 2 other collisions at sea, one involving a South Korean fishing vessel in the Sea of Japan, and another was a cruiser that ran aground off the coast of Japan. When you have 4 incidents like that under one individual's command, it's going to raise red flags, and unfortunately for Vice Admiral Aucoin, that meant that he was relieved of his command. Very rare event for an officer of his rank to go through something like that, and further so because he was already slated to retire next month. So the Navy's sending a very strong message here that they want accountability, and they want to make sure that anything that happens to their sailors or under whoever's command, that individual will be held accountable. Yeah, a very rare event, as you mentioned, a terrible tragedy, which makes it all the more striking it wasn't mentioned yet by President Trump. But back to our team over in the D.C. Bureau, one thing the president did talk about almost at the same time as he's mentioned within 24 hours about healing our divisions and moving together united as a country, was a threat to literally shut down the government if he had to. I think we have that little bit of sound, and we'll talk about it on the back end. Let's just play that real quick. This is President Trump from last night in Phoenix.
And we are building a wall on the southern border, which is absolutely necessary. Build that wall. Now, the obstructionist Democrats would like us not to do it, but believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall. Let me be very clear to Democrats in Congress who oppose a border wall and stand in the way of border security. You are putting all of America's safety at risk. You're doing that. You're doing that. Again, the Border Patrol today, I said, how important is the wall to some of the folks? I met with a lot of them. And they looked at me, they said, it's vital. It's vital. It's so vital.
Guys, when you hear President Trump speaking from last night, and we just heard him speak now in Reno, it really is like 2 different Trumps.
It is, and it's not a Trump that I think that's going to be received well when he arrives back in Washington again. I mean, that's not the party line in Washington. There's not appetite for that, and even if there was, I think there's a sense you need Democrats to go along with the funding bill, and holding up all of government for one priority like that. By the way, one that the president said on the campaign trail Mexico would pay for, not the United States taxpayers. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
No. Shutting down the government over funding for a wall is something that Republican leaders fundamentally disagree with. I mean, just a few minutes ago, Speaker Ryan was taking questions out on a trip on the West Coast, and he said he doesn't think a shutdown is necessary and that he doesn't think there's really an appetite for that. Look, Republicans are going to be coming back to Capitol Hill in 2 weeks facing a very daunting to-do list. First of all, they have to deal with the debt ceiling, pay the government's bills, and then keep the lights on. Deal with government funding before they can even get to any other priorities. The idea that you are going to try and hold that up over funding for the president's wall, that's not going to fly on Capitol Hill. But, you know, Rick, as you and I were talking about earlier, the president does have veto power. So if he's serious about this, he could really take this to the brink. But again, who would be blamed for that by the public? It would probably fall on Republicans.
Yeah, exactly. And Republican leadership is certainly probably not going to be happy about these comments. And remember, they were all here a few years ago when the government was shut down last time. President Trump wasn't. He was in the private sector. So they still remember the criticism that they faced when that happened last time around. They're not going to be eager, especially as they're heading into midterms coming up next year.
That's right.
Yeah, that didn't go over so well.
It didn't go over well, and at that time, there was a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate, and still Republicans shouldered most of the political blame. They ended up doing okay in the midterms and bounced back, but that was not a good political episode. It's bad for everybody. It's really bad when you actually control all of government. I mean, who else is to blame? I mean, you can talk about the Democrats all you want, but there's a House Speaker who's Republican, Senate Majority Leader is Republican, and a Republican president. That's who it's going to be.
And it is worth noting they have been taking steps to try and boost funding for border security, going through other, means to do that. But a government shutdown, it's not going to fly on the other side of town.
Not a good look. It's not a good look at all. Hey, Louis Martinez, before we let you go, I want to ask you about one other story we've been tracking on the heels of the president's announcement, his address to the nation the other night, about the new strategy and the new plan in Afghanistan. We're starting to learn a little bit of details about what that might look like and when troops could start to move in. What do we know about that?
Well, the first clue we got was from General Votel. He's the head of the U.S. Central Command, which oversees all U.S. forces in the Middle East. He's traveling in the region, and yesterday he told reporters that you can expect to see some new additional forces in Afghanistan over coming days, if not weeks. We also talked to additional officials who told us that Defense Secretary Mattis is reviewing the numbers of additional forces that might be headed over to Afghanistan. Vice President Pence yesterday kind of gave official confirmation to the 3,900 number that we've been reporting now for a while. That had been the original Pentagon recommendation, that recommendation had come in June. Now Secretary Mattis reviewing those numbers, and they could be even higher. And speaking of higher, we now learn that even though we've been talking about this 8,400 number of American forces inside Afghanistan, U.S. official telling us that yes, there are in fact 12,000 American troops there in Afghanistan. It's all because of the accounting. If these forces are there less than 3 to 6 months, they don't get counted under the official cap level that was put in place by President Obama last year. So that is something that they are now taking into account as well. Secretary Mattis saying that now that he has a fuller idea of how many troops are actually there inside Afghanistan, he can determine how many additional troops he can send there to plug the gaps, as he called it, so that he could expand the training mission and provide the additional combat air power which the Afghans are requesting. So that's what we're looking for right now. So there might be additional developments sometime this week, if not early next week, where we finally get the word that, yes, the Pentagon has given the official orders to these additional troops to head to Afghanistan. But as for now, more reviewing of the actual process and the numbers, the capabilities, and when they might go.
All right, Louis Martinez at the Pentagon for us. Hey, Rick, Mary, and Arlette, before I let you go, which Trump are we going to see next? He goes back to D.C. Do we see obstructionist Democrats, fake news Trump, or unity and healing Trump?
Isn't there a third option? I mean, I think we're
thrown more into the
it's
mix?
the third day of the week. I feel like we're overdue for a different version. I just think you're seeing a president who's taking his own political destiny into his own hands. This isn't about handlers, and this isn't about influence, and I think we've covered a lot in recent weeks. Scaramucci out, and Priebus out, and Spicer out, and Bannon out, and all. This is Trump being Trump. This is Trump saying, I get it. I know my own instincts on these things, and I'm going to tailor the message to the day of the week and know that I can move my supporters along with me. It seems like you're going to get whatever Trump wakes up and decides he wants to be.
Yeah, and that's no surprise and no mistake, right? The president knows what he's doing. There is some kind of strategy here. Whether or not his aides and top advisors know that strategy is another question, but he's leading this show. He's in charge. There's no question about it.
Indeed.
All right, Arlette Saenz, Rick Klein, and Mary Roos. Thanks for being with us, guys. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Amna.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching as well. Remember, you can go to abcnews.com anytime for continuing coverage on all of those stories and many more. For now, I'm Amna Nawaz, and I'll see you back here soon.